So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another replay battle. It has been a rather longer gap than I was hoping for with between the videos, because unfortunately the process of actually upgrading my PC took more time than I wanted it to. And unfortunately it probably won't see any benefit with this game in particular, because as I've said in the past, I was already basically right up to the limit of what Medieval 2 as a game could do anyway. So I don't think the upgrade's going to help too much with that. It might help with the recording and rendering, but not here. And also I'm still having a few issues actually with the PC after it's been upgraded, so I am still going to be able to put out some videos now at the very least, but I will be sort of tweaking around with things, and there may be another 3-day delay at some point in the near future as I sort of try and sort of restructure the files to be a little bit more intuitive and a little bit easier for me to get around and sort of more functional as well. So that is worth saying, but for the time being it should be back to business as usual, so I hope everybody hasn't forgotten about me in the interim. We will be seeing today, obviously this is a map we saw not too long ago. This is Mount Gundabad. This is the sort of the greener version. Obviously Mount Gundabad, there is another version where this area up here is a settlement, and it's sort of intended for more scenario-based gameplay where there are some defenders and then they are besieged on all sides by attackers. However, this time the map is split right down the middle as it was last time, and this is going to lead to a little bit of a field battle, particularly down on the lower plains over there. There are still a few terrain features like that spike of terrain over there and that castle there, which can be used as cover. But up here, it's going to be a little bit different. There's obviously a few stakes. There's obviously this area up here, which one of the players in particular has decided to deploy on, so they'll be going for a little bit more of a defensive-based approach. But the idea behind this battle is that it's going to be 4 Angmar armies rebelling against the rest of the forces of evil. So this is whether or not the Witch King can usurp Sauron as a leader of the evil forces on Middle-earth, I suppose. We'll start off with Angmar in that regard, I guess. We'll go with Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud, who is going to be playing as Angmar over here. He has the rather unenviable task of trying to dislodge someone from by far and away the most defensible point on the map. But if anyone can do it, it's Angmar with their very strong brute force approach. Although the Angmar halberds over here, they may not be the best halberds, but they do still offer a phalanx and AP. But it is worth saying as well, they are lowly orcs, so they will also break like dogs if they don't have the proper support in terms of morale buffing units, and also they're very vulnerable to arrows, of course. Then we have the Witch Realm Pikemen, much more like it in terms of quality, to be honest. In terms of pikes, they are certainly top half, I would say. Their armour stands them in pretty good stead as well. Definitely very close, around the same sort of level as the Uruk-hai Pikemen, of course, especially when the armour is upgraded, although here it isn't. We have some Guardians of Kharndoom as well. This will be a very important unit on this approach in particular if they're going up the hill, the narrow choke point, purely because their big shields will offer them good protection against arrows. They are also very defensive and very difficult to get rid of. They don't necessarily do as much damage as other sort of higher tier line infantry units, but very good at staying alive, very good at keeping the Angmar push alive. Over here we do have the Blackwatch Legion as well. The Blackwatch Legion obviously going to be a very important part of this as well, because they can potentially push through any defence which Harad put on up on the peak of that mountain there. And as I've said before, Great Shield units like this do tend to be not so great in sustained melee, particularly against factions with a lot of good AP options, which Harad are. But they should still be enough to sort of open up the way for all the halberds and Guardians of Kharndoom to pour in. And then in support we do have a unit of Orc Fellas which are AP, not so useful against Harad, but still a cheap Axeman unit like this can be very useful for the damage it can cause. Over here we do have the rest of Eclipse's army. He is actually facing 2 of the opposing armies, so this could be a little bit dangerous for him. He's got some Snaga Stalkers hidden all along his front line. Obviously they're just going to be cannon fodder. The first unit is free, the second unit is not that expensive either. And then over here we have the Barrow Wights. Obviously the Barrow Wights, as I said before, 0.97, they will be different in the sense that they will be just as quick as any other infantry unit really, but they will be losing half of their current HP, so they will be a little bit more user-friendly, but a lot less potent when they get into melee. And back here we have another unit which are on Pikemen, of course, backing them up with that Phalanx, and then a couple of units of the Orc Riders, which should be good enough to deal with any sort of cavalry that comes their way, because it is only evil factions on display today. And I think that's just about it. I can't see Eclipse's general anywhere, so that's, I guess he must be over there somewhere. Anyway, so that's the first Angmar army. The second Angmar army, which is probably going to have to go up the hill to help him out actually, if both Isengard and Harad are going to be laying siege to him, is going to be the armies of Master Blaster, who sent me the replay, so big thank you to him. He's got some Goblin Band hidden here at the front. Now the Goblin Band, I've always viewed them to be a little bit expensive for what they offer. They are spears, so in the next patch that might stand them in better stead, but for the time being they are basically just a fodder unit which actually costs money, unlike some of the other units like the Snaga and of course the Orc fodder. They are slightly better than the Orc fodder obviously, but even so not good enough to really justify any sort of price tag. Snaga Stalkers are over there as well. Meanwhile we have some Gundabad Guard over here, again another unit which at 0.97 with the buffs to spears will be significantly better. They are still pretty decent here, but for the most part you will see them foregone in favour of the unit that is just behind them, the Guardians of Khan Doom. These guys have the armour upgrade unlike the Army of Eclipse above him, so they will be just that little bit more survivable as well. We have over here as well the Witch Realm Black Guard, which is not where the General of Master Blaster's army is going to be, but we've seen time and time again just how strong the Witch Realm Black Guard in a sustained melee fight can be. And then over here we also have some Blackwatch Legion, again with the armour upgrade, so again more pushing units. Angmar, very much about their brute force, but so can all of the factions arrayed against them today, so they do need to be a little bit careful at least. The Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, not AP, but pretty good damage, pretty good skill in melee. They've got the armour upgrade as well to make them a little bit more survivable. They will be being changed to an Axe Thrower unit in the next patch, I believe, sort of a hybrid unit between what they are now and an Axe Thrower unit, but at the moment they are maybe a little bit squishy for their intended purpose, but they should still be able to do some decent damage, particularly against lightly armoured targets. The General's unit, meanwhile, going to be the Witch Realm Inquisitors, of course. You can see the Witch King and the General there, so if they can link up with Eclipse's Warg Riders, that's going to be a very strong anti-cavalry force indeed. And then the two units of Trolls, the Trolls of Gundabad and the Trolls of Angmar, which you often do see from Angmar because they are both so strong. So I think that is going to be all of Master Blaster's army. We're going to be getting into Froggies over here. He's got some Goblin Trackers, so some archers at the very least, and not going to be entirely about their melee units this time, Angmar. Also a catapult as well, so that's good. The catapult should be able to put some pressure on the enemies across the way, although I would imagine that Froggy and the other player down there, Baconfish, are going to be having to sort of engage in a much more of a field battle down here with the other two armies, matching up 2 and 2. We have some Witch Realm Blackguard and the Witch Realm Hammer Guard back here, so some very, very strong infantry indeed. It's going to be quite difficult to get some cavalry in and around this army after all, so investing more in the infantry is going to be a pretty good idea, I think. Snaga Archers on the front line, backed up by Goblin Band as well. So again, some cheap units, backed up by the Guardians of Khan Doom once again. Obviously, such a mainstay of Angmar, such a good anchor to their line in many ways because of how survivable they really are. And then some Goblin Trackers in behind there as well, and that's going to bring us into the Trolls of Gundabad and Angmar once more. Some good sustained combat trolls there, and he's also got the Inquisitors and some Warg Skirmishers, so some Jav Cav. They should be able to do some decent damage to enemy cavalry at range, and also if the enemies have not, or if the red team I should say, have not invested much in their cavalry, their javelins can be used against infantry blobs as well. And that's going to bring us obviously to the Witch Realm Inquisitors once again, a very, very strong melee knight unit, which obviously more than one of them is going to be quite difficult to deal with from an enemy perspective. We have Baconfish's army now as well, a little bit more densely packed, but that's to be expected, I suppose. He's up against a very wide Mordor army there. Some Goblin Band here at the front once again, so a lot of Goblin Band, interestingly enough. And then some upgraded Witch Realm Pikemen and Guardians of Khan Doom forming that front line. It's a very, very solid front line indeed. Not necessarily good at dealing damage quickly, which is what Angmar are usually known for, but it will hold for a long time as long as they're only facing enemies from the front. I think my voice is also dying as well, so that's just perfect timing. We have some Angmar Halberds back here as well, as sort of the secondary line to be used as reinforcements. Some Witch Realm Scourge Raiders back here as well, and also the Witch Realm Hammer Guard, which is where the General is going to be. And unsurprising to see a pretty substantial cav force as well to make sure that Mordor can sort of go fully wide and wrap around the Angmar army and go up the line of Baconfish. He's got some Witch Realm Inquisitors once again, and then a couple of units of Warg Riders. So, now that's done, let's go and have a look at the red team and what they have brought to the battle today. Starting off with Ragnar, who's playing as Mordor, obviously Sauron himself, the forces of Sauron, most displeased with the Witch King's rebellion, come to squash it personally. We have some Morannon archers here at the front, which Mordor can generally count on having an archer advantage against Angmar, so it's not too surprising to see them. Although, I'm not sure how Mordor is quite going to handle this. We have some Orc fodder here on the front, which is obviously going to get absolutely mulched by the Goblin Band when kill them off too quickly, but the support from the Guardians of Khan Doom and the Witch Realm Pikemen is going to be a big, big problem for the Orc fodder. But obviously they are just going to be a buffer for Mordor's more important units. Over here, some Morannon guards, so some slightly more impressive spears, although they are still, you only have to look at their shields and their armour to know that they aren't exactly the finest in terms of quality, but still better than the Orc fodder. I would assume that they're going to try and get involved in the cav fight over here, try and give Mordor the edge. Back here we have the Morannon Halberds, which once again, the Morannon Halberds are stronger than the Angmar Halberds. The armour is better. So that is an area where they can claim to have a bit of an advantage, but the Angmar Halberds are also certainly not the mainstay of the Angmar army across the way, so we'll see how Mordor deal with that. The Morannon infantry, on the other hand, is an area where Mordor may struggle a little bit because they are not as strong as the Guardians of Khand Dûm. They are still pretty decent, obviously numbers as well, but they will not be able to claim a sort of victory over the Angmar front line. But then again, that's often the case for the Orcs. They often need to sort of affect the fight in some other way. We have the Temple Executioners without the armor upgrade over here. Again, very, very strong unit. The Hammer Guard might be able to beat them if they land a good charge on them, first of all, to kill off a few models. But if it's just a very grindy fight, I would imagine the Temple Executioners could probably take that home, just due to their higher skill. The Ballista, which probably leads me to believe actually that Mordor will be a little bit more defensive. Excuse me. And this should force Angmar to come forward, which how Ragnar then deals with Angmar barreling down on him, we shall see. The Olag Kai over here, which in terms of a single troll unit, probably stronger than anything Angmar has, but Angmar generally will bring 2 heavily armoured troll units, whereas Mordor will often only bring the 1. And obviously numbers will win out there. Some Orc Javelins here at the back to offer some support. We also have some Melkor's Chosen, which is where the General's going to be, obviously again, very, very strong. Not sure who would win actually in a fight between the Melkor's Chosen and the Witcher Arm Inquisitors. I think it would probably be the Melkor's Chosen. But, obviously again, it's going to be a very interesting cav fight indeed. Over here actually we can see some Temple Inquisitors as well, so again, very, very strong. And some Lancers. Now the Númenórean Lancers should steer well clear of the Wargs if they know what's good for them, but they could also, if Angmar sort of overextend themselves a bit, get some very nice rear charges, we shall see. The other force, which is going to be down here in the lowlands, as it were, going to be taking cover behind this terrain feature over here, so certainly I think Mordor and their allies from Rudauer over here, commanded by Inarius, are going to be more defensive against Angmar, which is perhaps to be expected with how aggressive Angmar usually are. We have some Dunman Spearmen over here, combined with the Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters with some stakes. Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters, very, very good unit, I've said before. Their anti-cavalry capabilities could come in handy, but I feel as though their javelins are the important thing here to try and make a dent in some of the scarier Angmar units. Granadine Pikes, we've seen in more recent times as well just how effective they can be. A very, very strong pike unit. I would definitely put them up there with the Witch Realm Pikemen and the Uruk-hai Pikemen, if not higher, for less cost as well. Up here, or down here I should say, we have some Rudauer Swordsmen again. Nothing too special. Most of Angmar's units will be able to deal with them quite comfortably, but it is more units that they're going to have to cut their way through, because most of Angmar's forces are fairly high tier, except for the Goblin Band and Snaga, which of course the Rudauer Swordsmen will be able to deal with quite easily. Witch Realm Enslavers, an important unit I think this for Rudauer, purely because they are AP. Very similar units to the Witch Realm Hammer Guard in many ways, and obviously that AP is going to be very useful at cutting through the majority of the Angmar armies. Back here, the Rudauer army, obviously another AP unit, the Granadine Nobles. They trade in a bit of armour and a bit of melee skill for AP and melee, which is actually not good against wargs, it must be said, but against a lot of other units it can be useful, and obviously as knights they will be able to do huge damage off charges, which is going to be quite important, I feel. Granadine Berserkers, very good unit in melee. They're basically shock infantry in melee with their AP, but they also have a couple of volleys of axes that can be thrown to soften up the enemy before they charge in. More Rudauer Swordsmen over here, as well as some Rudauer Marksmen as a sort of makeshift skirmish line here, and some Granadine Pikes. And he's also got a catapult over here, which I would assume is going to be engaged in an artillery duel with Froggy, although Froggy definitely has the terrain advantage here, so he might be able to kill off the Rudauer catapult, which would be a real disaster. Rudauer do have their share of hidden units that can hide as well, so there probably are a few Rudauer units that are hiding, possibly some scouts on horseback. I would say certainly the Rangers. Meanwhile, let's go up here. Down here in the lowlands, I don't fancy the chances of the red team, to be fair, with how they've set up. I feel as though Angmar do have a bit of an advantage there, but up here on the high ground is where the red team can push a bit of an advantage if they can kill off Eclipse and hold off Master Blaster from reinforcing him quickly. We have BG Lord, who is going to be playing as Isengard, so Saruman has decided to side with Sauron rather than the Witch King. Uruk-hai Infantry and Uruk-hai Pikemen are obviously the mainstays of any Isengard army. Uruk-hai Crossbows over here for that punch, which is going to be very important against something like the Barrow-wights. More Pikemen, and more infantry. Also got some Wargs over here, some Warg Skirmishers, and the Isengard Ballista, which if that gets into a good position to start scything through an army, going to be very, very nasty indeed. Trolls of the White Hand as well, Nazkai, all of the important stuff back here, Alerts Hunting Pack, and Guards of Orthanc. Now let's go and see what Harad have brought. Now, Harad have sort of taken up a very defensive position. Whether they can hold this position remains to be seen. Haradrim Spearmen, now Eclipse is in a bit of a tight spot when it comes to facing artillery, because there is another catapult up here, as well as obviously the ballista down there. Muhard Berserkers, their AP will come in handy against a lot of the Angmar forces. Muhard Berserkers, 2 of them, and I should say as well that the Stoned Orc is going to be playing as them. I hope he's not stoned when he's facing Angmar, otherwise he will be crushed. Southron Pikemen, AP Pikes actually, a very, very rare breed indeed. But the downside to these guys is that their stats are terrible. As soon as their phalanx is broken, they get cut to pieces very, very easily. Muhard Warriors backing them up as well as some Southron Pikes. We've got some Southron Archers as well, so a skirmish force there. Beast Tamers, so more of a phalanx unit, more Muhard Warriors, and then back here we do have some Trollmen, which is actually where the General's going to be. Obviously a very, very strong unit, the Trollmen. And then back here we will see the Haradrim Cavalry Force. Of course, the mainstay of this is going to be the Mumakil. Time will tell how useful they are going to be. A couple of units of the Serpent Guard as well. And then, a very interesting pick as well, the Muhard War Beasts. Now, if they get rolling, if they can avoid the anti-cavalry of Angmar, and if they get charges into the rear of Angmar's army, could be an extremely, extremely profitable venture for them. Meanwhile, without further ado, I suppose, let's begin. Let's see how these forces decide to engage with this. Now, I would imagine, you can see here that Isengard is going to be sort of spreading out this way, which is a good move. They should also put some infantry on this hill over here to sort of block Master Blaster from reinforcing. But you can see here immediately the Harad going to be using their catapult to try and do some nice damage there. Ooh, we're up ×2 speed. I thought something was a little bit wrong there. As the rain starts to come down, the rainstorm here on Mount Gundabad, the catapult going to be bombarding this position, but there's also not really a lot of surface area for them to hit, so Eclipse 2500 might be quite pleased to sort of let this happen. The Wargs are taking a bit of a beating, but it's not the end of the world. Isengard, meanwhile, are also moving in, and Isengard, I think, are going to be trying to use their crossbows to skirmish down. Particularly the Barrow-wights would be useful, but Barrow-wights are hiding, so it would be very fortuitous if they win. Meanwhile, that Isengard Ballista going through the line as well, killing off Barrow-wights, so a bit of a sticky situation up here for Eclipse for the time being. Meanwhile, Ragnar charging forward with a huge portion of his cavalry, very, very close to Baconfish's Warg Riders. The Temple Inquisitors getting a charge into the Warg Riders there, so very, very impressive. Although the Númenórean Lancers are also in here, and they will not enjoy being in melee with the Warg Riders. And now you can see that the Witchrealm Inquisitors are coming down. Now, if the Witchrealm Inquisitors get involved, this fight will turn around very, very quickly. There's also Wargs coming across, so yeah, Mordor need to reinforce at this point, and I don't think they've got reinforcements anywhere near. I was wrong. The Melkor's chosen it here. Now, I still feel as though, based on the fact that Froggy has got his cavalry over here helping, and there are 2 units of Witchrealm Inquisitors and Trolls, this is still not a good engagement for Mordor. They need to get out of here. And you can see here that the Mordor Ballista is putting pressure on the Angmar forces, and with how densely packed that front line is, that is going to be a good move. I think actually it's about time we turn down to half speed with how quickly this battle is moving. So the Melkor's chosen, and the Mordor cavalry in general is going to have to pull back, and this is going to allow Angmar to go right on the offensive and start pushing against Mordor with their cavalry, and they probably will want to move forward with their infantry as well, which I think Baconfish is now doing, purely because that ballista is going to be getting 3 kills on them all the while this is happening. Froggy's main army, meanwhile, is holding its position, which is understandable. I mean, Rudauer are right there after all. Meanwhile, Master Blaster is going to be moving some of his forces up to sort of block Rudauer from reinforcing up here as well, I would assume. And he is also moving to try and help out Eclipse. And this is... We'll see now whether Isengard were able to mount a defense quickly enough, which I think they were, to be honest. I think that, you know, they were able to put some pikes and some infantry in the way to sort of block this advantage. You can also see that these crossbows, not with the best shot, to be fair, but they are still going to be able to do some damage to this Angmar force, who are trying to push through, but the Blackwatch Legion are not up here. They're going to be relying on the Gundabad Guard to be their units, which are going to be pushing forward with a lot of mass. You can see here the Guardians of Khan Doom on the front line as well. But this is honestly a very similarly matched front line in terms of how good it is between Isengard and Angmar. Usually Angmar can sort of crush their way through very basic front lines, but Isengard have got some strength here as well, and particularly with reinforcements, and particularly when fighting uphill, Angmar will probably fancy their chances of holding this line. Warg skirmishers, meanwhile. You can see here that Eclipse, I think, is in a bit of an interesting position, because this force down here is having to just hold its ground, because it wouldn't stand a chance if it came forward to attack Isengard. That might change now with Master Blaster support. Meanwhile, well, here we go, the Witches. That was why I didn't see the General, it was in such a small unit. Meanwhile, these forces over here were utterly vanquished before I even saw them. Now we'll see if Harad's front line is truly up to the task of actually holding this ground, and I don't think it is, to be fair. I think the layered defence of Harad is going to slowly but surely find itself put to the sword by Eclipse's Angmar army. They are getting hit by those arrows from Southron archers, but obviously that's certainly not the end of the world. A lot of the Angmar forces very well armoured and very well shielded. The Orc Fella's a bit of an exception there, but they're just going to be charged forward as the sacrificial first line. The Pikes might be a better target to go after than the Guardians of Kharndoom, but so far so good for Eclipse up here. There are some forces down here which Stone Orc needs to sort of have a much more united front against Angmar. Otherwise Angmar will just slowly munch each line you create. Meanwhile, see over here that Eclipse 2500 is going to be coming to the aid of Master Blaster's attack up the hill. With some Snaga, with some Wargs. I would imagine that this isn't going to go too well for him, to be honest, though. I think that while he is charging forward, Isengard should have the ability to deal with this sort of pressure, particularly with their elite units, which are just in behind. However, you can see the Goblin Band victory actually seems certain now with the rear charge of those Snaga Stalkers. The Pikes are going to be very unsettled by that, and Angmar having a good time of it up here. Well, this small army over here is moving to put pressure on Rudauer's flank, but getting a little bit far away from the support from Froggy, I think. Meanwhile, down here, what have we here? The Trolls of Gundabad are here, in the Moran on archers from Ragnar. You can see a battle between trolls here, a real duel of the titans between the Olag High and the Trolls of Angmar, although I definitely give the Olag High the advantage in that fight. Much more offensively minded. Trolls of Angmar with their big shields, of course. Meanwhile, the Orc Fodder are here. The Orc Fodder will do little to stop the Trolls, but I feel as though the front line for Mordor really needs to prepare itself, because from on high, Baconfish's army is going to come crashing down on it. At the very least, Rudauer is going to need to do something at this point. The Ferodral Javelins revealing themselves, which is good to see. Hidden units, which will come in very handy indeed. You can see the Orc Javelins now in range of the Trolls. I think they're trying to do some damage to, but again, I feel as though Mordor's lines are a little bit too flimsy for the storm that's coming their way. And there are the Witch-Realm Inquisitors, the cavalry just sort of rotating around, trying to keep Mordor's cavalry bottled up, and now the cav advantage is very much in favour of Angmar down here after that initial engagement between Mordor and Angmar. Meanwhile, we'll go up to 1 speed again, as this fight really hots up. The Warg Riders of Eclipse are now broken under the pressure from the Trolls to White Hand. Those Barrow-wights also getting hammered on by the Isengard Ballista, but this Isengard front line is struggling a little bit. See the Guardians of Kharndoom continuing to sort of be the anchor here, and with the rear, the Snaga Stalkers aren't up to much in melee, but the fact that they are distracting a lot of these Pikes is giving Master Blaster's forces the opening they need to be more annoying than they would otherwise be. See here, the Witch-Realm Pikemen, I think, are being targeted by crossbows. Indeed they are. The Barrow-wights are also on the way. More of Eclipse's Wargs are also on the way. What madness is befalling the battlefield now? The Barrow-wights getting attacked by the Trolls of the White Hand, which, to be fair, I mean, this is one of the few units which can probably make a sizable dent in the Barrow-wights pretty quickly. As this is going on, what is going on up here? I mean, this fight is actually going relatively slowly. I'm actually a little bit surprised that Eclipse is not moving forward with more forces. I think Harad was scattered, and the opportunity was there to quickly go through the lines, and unfortunately for him now, the Stone Orcs front line is very well positioned to deal with this, because he's got a double phalanx here. You can see that the Southron Pikemen are here with their AP, and they're also being backed up by the Beast Tamers, although that will certainly not help. The Witchers are now in the perfect position to start grilling this line, and this is pretty much going to be the entirety of this double phalanx destroyed. Having said that, this will be a lot of the ammunition from the Witchers already used on very basic Harad units, so while that is pretty devastating, and it was certainly a worthwhile endeavour, it's not all bad news for the red team as this continues. The Southron Archers, meanwhile, continuing to just sort of spray down on the Guardians of Kharndoom. How much damage they're actually going to be doing is debatable. The Guardians of Kharndoom trying to take advantage of the now very weakened Pike units. I don't know which force that would be. I would assume it's Isengard, because they've seen by far the most combat against 2 opposing armies. Now you can see that Master Blaster is starting to send more and more of his armies up here. Yeah, and this is where Rudauer's sort of unwillingness to move is really going to start hurting them, I think, because you can see that Master Blaster is moving his army right around which is going to force Harad's cavalry to be used earlier than they would have liked. And really, Rudauer is powerless to stop this now. He really needed to move something to try and at least delay Master Blast from doing this, because now the high ground is definitely going to be seized by Angmar. Meanwhile, over here, you see the Franodine nobles are coming over here to try and help out, and they have managed to break off a unit of Guardians of Khandun, but this front line over here is looking very, very chaotic indeed. Rudauer are moving over to help Mordor, to their credit though, so that's good. The Angmar Halberds are overextending themselves a little bit over here as well, the Dunman Spearmen getting right in the way of them. The Mordor Ballista is still online, but for how long I'm not sure. There are some Black Bolts, another unit which can hide, obviously very, very good, but they're being utterly overwhelmed here by the very comprehensive front line of Baconfish. That Ballista is trying to do what damage it can, but you can see that the front lines over here just weren't strong enough, and they are being overwhelmed piece by piece. There are the Temple Inquisitors as well, just sort of waiting in reserve. The Witchram Inquisitors being chased off by the Olag High, and getting shot by arrows as well. Walk Skirmishers from Froggy coming in for a charge. Yeah, I think the way that Baconfish and Froggy have worked in tandem here has been very, very impressive, and it's one of the reasons why the red team are on the back foot here. Guardians of Khandun continuing to move forward. Moran on infantry trying to sort of plug the gap after the Black Bolts were trampled. The Ballista's still here. The Orc Javelins trying to do some damage as well. The Temple Executioners need to get in there. I mean, they need a powerful unit to start doing damage quickly here, and it is not forthcoming. Meanwhile, whatever happened to Isengard? Looks as though they are retreating, so they're going to try and sort of camp the hilltop here. Interestingly enough as well, this Harad cavalry could be giving the business to the Master Blaster's reinforcing army here, but now you can see that Haradrim Spearmen are being left to try and deal with Scourge Raiders. Scourge Raiders are not the best unit, to be honest, in 0.96, but they'll be able to deal with Haradrim Spearmen, especially when they've got the support of these trolls over here. This is going to cause the Harad militia to break very, very quickly. Eclipse is also putting pressure on this front line over here, fighting downhill into Muhad Berserkers, so that's obviously going to be a very healthy engagement for the blue team once again. And still, now you can see here that this is what I was expecting to see from Eclipse up here on the hilltop sooner, to be honest with you, because they have moved forward in force very, very quickly. And Harad have really been powerless to stop them because they didn't have enough men up here. They needed one solid front line, but obviously the danger of doing that was always going to be the Witches. Looks as though the Witches have been at work over here as well. A lot of dead Haradrim skirmishers from something anyway. And there are the Witches, actually caught out by the Guards of Orthanc. That could be the end of Eclipse's general, but I feel as though at this point... Oh, there's the end of the Rudauer general as well. Here you can see the Nazkai moving in. Going to be blocking the advance of Eclipse around this flank. The Angmar Halberds are shaken and tired, but they have the upper hand in this fight. Isengard's reinforcements will be... Oh, excuse me. Will be appreciated, but I don't think it's going to be enough at this point. Purely because they're being attacked on all sides, and the Isengard reinforcements are in turn being chased by more Angmar reinforcements. You can see there that is going to be the end of the last of the Harad forces guarding the base of the slopes. And that means the Harad infantry is going to be left to its own devices. What have we here? Goblin Band trying to move in. Actually killing off a few of the Serpent Guard, but the Serpent Guard now getting a charge in there. You'd imagine that this is going to break the Goblin Band pretty quickly. They're also under ranged fire from the Mumakil. So not great for them. Meanwhile, you can see now that the rest of Froggy's army now putting pressure on the Rudauer force, and they're going to be made to pay, I think, for their static nature during most of this fight. They wanted to be defensive, use this big spiked terrain here as a bit of a shield. But Angmar, they're never really going to be the most potent at range. It's always going to be, their damage is going to be done primarily by their melee units. Well, the Witches are a ranged unit as well, but they are sort of a very specific example. While the Animals Troll Hunters are here, reloading even. So we're going to shoot point blank, I think. Sort of again regathering themselves. There with them around on archers. So to be fair, I mean, Mordor are still alive over here. There goes the Harad general as expected. Shanked by the Witchround Blackguard. still some Mordor cavalry. I mean, Mordor have held up a little bit better than I was thinking. I was thinking that when I saw the chaos of what was going on over here, that they would fall apart more quickly than this. I still think that Angmar are going to be successful. You know, they're continuing to just sort of push through the middle over here. The Temple Inquisitors, or Temple Executioners I should say, are now in melee. And they should be more than enough to deal with a unit of Angmar Hellbirds. And Guardians of Khan Numar moving forward, however, trying to shut down this ballista. Baconfish was very keen to actually shut down the ballista to the point where he maybe overextended himself a little bit. The Hammer Guard are sort of deep in here, but they're up against artillery crew and Orc Javelins, so they've got really nothing to fear. Even when they're being shot in the back, it's really no problem. But it could have been dangerous if there were Orc Javelins nearby. It could have been a real disaster. There goes another general. That I can only assume is Isengard's, considering the trolls were blocking the way. So the Random Guard's still fighting over here. Meanwhile, and more Troll Hunters pulling away. So actually this area over here, Rudar have been victorious in. Here we can see the Black Wolves and the Witch Realm Enslavers, but I'm not sure whether this is going to be enough to sort of give them any distinct advantages. We'll see. I mean, Froggy is putting pressure on this side as well over here. But the Frankenstein Pikemen are in the way, so it could be that Rudauer actually will pull out a bit of a victory over here. Let's see what's happening over here. The Guards of Orthanc being pressured by the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. I don't think there's really much of anything else up here, to be honest with you. Very comprehensive victory it's looking like for Eclipse 2500 and Master Blaster's Angmar armies. And they are going to have the peak of Mount Gundabad. Meanwhile, what have we here? There goes, I think, the Angmar General. Or a Angmar General. Meanwhile, the Serpent Guard. Just wiping that unit of Snaga from the face of the earth. They need to get out of there fairly quickly, however. The Barrow Wights aren't going to fall over in melee to Lancers. You need to charge them. These Barrow Wights could find themselves in a bit of a sticky situation here now, though. They can be cycle charged because they don't really have any support. And that will wear them down better than most approaches for dealing with Barrow Wights in a melee fight. There's also those War Beasts over there as well, which can't be forgotten about. But I believe Isengard are pretty much gone from the field at this point. They're going to have very little left other than those Guards of Orthanc. Harad as well, really all they've got left is their mounted contingent. That was a nice charge there, though. Enough to kill off a few more of the Barrow Wights, and this is where the Serpent Guard find themselves right at home, cycle charging in and out of a unit like this. They are losing unit models for each charge, but getting rid of the Barrow Wights is definitely a worthwhile endeavour, and the best of the Harad cavalry is still on the way over. Another nice charge here, so good work here from the Stone Dork. Obviously his mountaintop defence didn't go too well, but he's going to try and claw back some value now from this fight over here. Meanwhile,
only half the enemy force remains.
Not looking good actually for Froggy. From a macro perspective, I was thinking that all the pressure Angmar were applying was going to be enough to see the red team scoured from the field, but it's not looking like it.
The battle is very much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
Angmar still, I would agree with the announcement that Angmar still hold a fairly substantial advantage, but Rudauer sending Froggy's army packing. The question is, however, what can Mordor do? Will Mordor have an army left? Mordor might actually be victorious down here as well. See over there, some Goblin Band from Baconfish. So Mordor, technically speaking, with some Rudauer support, have won over here. The Hammer Guard are about to be completely destroyed. We've still got some Melkor's Chosen, but Mordor's army is in tatters. They don't have as intact an army as Rudauer do. So it's not going to be a 2v2 in the late game, I feel like. It's more like going to be a 2v1.5, combined with whatever sort of remnants of the opposing armies there are. Still a fairly sizable chunk of time left in this battle to go as well. What is this over here? We can see the Witch Realm Inquisitors from Master Blaster going after the soft targets, going after the Morannon Archers. Actually, that's some friendly fire, I think, as well. But there are the Attenmore's Troll Hunters, which are spears, of course. A charge between the Melkor's Chosen and the Witch Realm Inquisitors. However, the Melkor's Chosen a little bit more battered and bruised than the Witch Realm Inquisitors, which is going to see this fight go against them, I feel like, which could be the end of Mordor's General as well. But here come the Attenmore's Troll Hunters to support once again. Heavily armoured spears, the last thing that the Witch Realm Inquisitors want to be engaging with right now. As well as some Granadine Pikes as well. Numenorean Lancers alive. Morannon Halberd. So Mordor, I think, would probably be best off trying to regroup with Rudauer. Looks as though they're actually heading for the low ground, which is interesting. Those Witchram Inquisitors are being a real nuisance. Definitely going after the squishiest targets, time and time again. And there goes an Angmar General. I would assume that's Bacon Fishes. The Numenorean Lancers squashing the Witchram Inquisitors between them and the Archers, but these are targets which the Witchram Inquisitors won't mind being in melee with. Orc Javelins on the way. Well, let's go and see what Harad's cavalry is up to. There's still Serpent Guard left alive, which is a good sign for them. There are the Mumakil, getting right in there, but unfortunately I think the Mumakil, yeah, it's they overextended themselves. The Mumakil are very strong. They can't win you a battle all by themselves. You need to support them appropriately. Making sure they don't run amok is the primary concern usually, but they're routing, so that's going to be the end of the Mumakil. Unfortunate there from a Harad perspective. Because really I think if Harad can do a lot of damage here to these Angmar forces which have taken the mountain, they could give the Rudauer and Mordor player a pretty decent chance at winning this fight. But they need to use their cavalry a little bit more wisely than they're currently doing. They are getting some nice charges off here, trying to sort of whittle down the strength that they do have. And there are the Muhad War Beasts, of course. They need to get out of the way of the Trolls. That's the last place they want to be, really. Serpent Guard getting out of there, they are wavering. Both units of Serpent Guard still in, well, fairly decent shape. I've seen worse. Yeah, the constant charging going on here. The Mumakil, they have actually returned, and I think that... and they are getting their melee animations off as well, which it's hard to force the Mumakil to do that, but you can see that they're killing like 30 Guardians of Kharndoom at a time when they do that, which is obviously going to do huge damage to them. The Mumakil are now running amok though, so now that'll be the end. That'll be the last contribution that they make. Meanwhile, the War Beasts, they can also run amok, of course, charging in, trying to do some more damage. And the Harad cavalry has done damage. I mean, it hasn't been utterly wasted. It could have been used slightly better, I think, but even so, not bad at all. There are the Blackguard. They're going to charge in to try and... yeah, the Muhad War Beast now running amok, but opening themselves up to a full charge there from the Serpent Guard, so a lot of damage done to the Witchram Blackguard. Need to get out of there, though, because the Witchram Pikemen are just in behind them. That's a lot of Blackguard that just got destroyed. And you can see that Rudauer and Mordor have managed to successfully regroup. This is actually going to be difficult. I think that the red team have done a pretty good job of turning this fight around so far. It's looking a little bit sketchy early on for them, but much closer now. We are at more or less the halfway point. And you can see here that Angmar are ahead, only just though. But Rudauer still have a lot of their elites left alive, completely untouched. Harad still have this Serpent Guard, which is still going to be a real pain to try and deal with. Those Witchram Scourge Raiders are sort of a little bit further away than the other units, and they are going to again receive another charge. They're in loose formation, but even so, that's going to be a devastating charge for them. So that's another nice charge here from the Serpent Guard, who are really, really pulling their weight. Very often you see a unit of Lancers like this misused. I would say that they don't have too much in the way of legs left in them now, because they are losing unit models every time they charge in. They're starting to waver each time they are forced to charge in. As long as they avoid the pikes, though, I mean, they could even charge the halberds, and that would, probably cause some sort of break. Yeah, real pain this for Angmar, because they really need to sort of regroup their forces at this point and start trying to move on Rudauer and Mordor. But the more damage that the Stone Orc does here with his Serpent Guard, the more sketchy it's going to be. And you can see here the Serpent Guard getting away. They need to be real careful, though. Oof, very narrowly avoiding getting pulled into a fight there with the Trolls. Are they going to go for the Barrow-wights? I think they are. They're definitely thinking about it. This is definitely the squishier underbelly of the Angmar force. Trying to sort of rotate the pikes and the spears out to each of the flanks and sort of guard themselves. If the Mumakil had been used a little bit more sparingly, this could have been disastrous for Angmar. Goes to show how deadly Harad's cav force can be as well. Harad may not be best known for their non-Mumakil cavalry, but it is potent. I mean, there you can see the Serpent Guard unfortunately breaking the close proximity of the Trolls, the spears as well. They should come back though. This unit of Serpent Guard, meanwhile, going to charge right into the Gundabad Guard. Maybe this is a little bit less advised. They didn't really do much in the way of damage there, and that is going to be the end of that Serpent Guard unit. Again, the Serpent Guard have been used well, but they could potentially have been used even better. Some Muhad warriors will actually return from routing, charging downhill into the Scourge Raiders, but immediately routing, obviously, the Harad army. in tatters at this point, and this unit of Serpent Guard, I think, which is routing. Ah, hello. What on earth was that? Meanwhile, Froggy's army is over here. Those Moomakil in the background are running amok, of course, so they're no real danger to Froggy unless they decide to randomly come over here. Numenorian Lancers charging into the Goblin Trackers, trying to do what damage they can. Sort of very depleted units from Mordor sort of cresting the hill. Froggy still does have his catapult though, and he does still have both of his most elite units. Meanwhile, this building has been hit by some sort of cav force at some point. Rudar marksmen coming in with their fire arrows, trying to sort of burn the artillery piece by the looks of things. With how depleted they are, they'd be lucky to do that. But it's understandable why, of course, because if Rudar and Mordor want to advance and attack, that catapult could be their doom. Baconfish still has a couple of units, well, he has one unit of which are on pikemen over here as well. Ragnar with some Moran on infantry. The Snaga from Froggy routing off. Melkor's Chosen are over here. Taking a huge amount of arrow fire though from the Goblin Trackers up on that slight hill. But obviously the Melkor's Chosen easily going to be able to rout units like this. The Goblin Trackers absolutely no chance when being charged by Caragors. And there are the Moran on infantry as well, just sort of shifting their perspective. You can see again more arrows blowing into the very depleted Mordor force that was committed forward. I think Rudar is where most of the strength lies. Where did those Caragors go? There they are. Mordor's general's still alive, actually, impressively enough. The Goblin band are wavering. And this could be enough to see them break, to be honest. The close proximity of a unit that causes fear. Needed a better charge than that, really, though. There go the Snaga. And there go the Goblin band. Numenorian Lancer. And the three Melkor's Chosen doing the business there. Well, Froggy's catapult trying to do its own work as Inarius comes forward with some Rudar forces. But there you can see a scary sight for Rudar and Mordor. Angmar's forces streaming down from their victory on Mount Gundabad, which started off very well, got a little bit more tricky when Harad's cavalry was activated. But now, very much victorious, a lot of elites as well, which is a concern. I don't think really Rudar have got enough left in the tank to kill all of them. There goes the Mordor general, although Mordor, their army is the one that is a little bit more depleted. Rudar have already lost their general, of course. Another nice grazing hit there on the Ranadine pikes. Rudar need to get into a position where they can comfortably engage these forces, and unfortunately I think for them, they're going to be forced to engage right in front of Froggy's catapult, which is no bueno for them. Baconfish, meanwhile, his army is routing off. The last of his army, I should say. Here come the Atmor's Trollhunters, they're already wavering. Again, overextending themselves a little bit here, I think, the red team. They needed to advance as more of a unit rather than just sending forward individual forces. And now the Atmor's Trollhunters are, of course, going to be absolutely squashed by the Hammer Guard and the Black Guard. Certainly not the engagement they want, unless they've got their javelins. And again, close range shots here. I think this is where Rudauer start to lose all of the units they managed to save earlier on in the battle by their more conservative approach. That's Massive Lass's army as well, combined with what's left of Eclipse's army, shuffling down off the hills. Still some Round Halberds, still some Temple Executioners. There's a lot of the Rudauer army left over here, however, and they need to start getting into a position where they need to engage as well, because they're sending forwards their units one at a time, which is, you know how I feel about sending forward units one at a time. It never really works. Ranadine Berserkers, or Pikemen I should say, Berserkers. I haven't actually seen the Ranadine Berserkers, so I believe they're still alive, and indeed they are. There's the Rudauer catapult, although with Flaming Shot, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to hit the Witch Realm catapult. What is that over there? Rudauer marksmen still trying to burn them. There go the Rudauer swordsmen. The Atmor's Trollhunters squashed as well. The Ranadine pikes now having to hold the line alone. Their phalanx will allow them to survive a little longer, I suppose, but still only a single unit of pikes which they're having to sort of place their hopes upon. Their hopes and dreams, which are about to be crushed, especially as more forces from Angmar arrive. Still a bit of skirmish pressure. There go the Dunman Spearmen there. Getting shot in the back by the goblin trackers. I'm surprised actually that both catapults are using flaming shots still, even though they're both shooting at each other. More fire arrows. I don't know what they're going for though. Completely missing the catapult, some of them. Goblin trackers trying to sort of kill off enough of those units so that they don't return. Granadine pikemen meanwhile are about to be utterly overwhelmed. I'm a big fan of the Granadine pikemen, but they are very much outgunned here. The strongest of Angmar's infantry crashing down upon them. See here that a detachment from Eclipse 2500 is essentially going to send all of his forces over here to, I think, just try and engage Inarius' forces over there. And then once they're victorious here, Master Blaster and Froggy will then probably go around this way and catch Rudauer in a pincer movement. These pikes, you can see that they are holding their ground much better than other units. That phalanx will help. It does help keep those units at arm's length. The trackers are fighting something. What are they fighting? Oh, I see. There's a Granadine pikeman that came over here to try and sort of engage the catapult crew, I suppose. Didn't go very well for them though, which around Blackguard almost immediately cleaned them up. Master Blaster still has his Blackwatch Legion, although at this point in the battlefield I think sort of melee prowess is going to be more important. The mass push could still be useful over there, I suppose, but, you know, at this point I think it's just the sheer weight of numbers that Angmar have left, which is going to be the problem that Rudauer face, because Rudauer at this point are pretty much having to face a combined might of Angmar all on their lonesome. There are still a couple of Mordor units scattered around, I think, but nothing overly substantial. What is over here? Looks like rotting meat was being flung at Eclipse's army. Rotting meat can actually kill individual unit models if it gets a direct hit, but even so. You'd imagine that the orcs would like fighting amongst rotting meat, to be honest, but still. And there goes the last of the Rudauer forces there, which is of course going to allow Master Blaster and Procky to pour forwards, go after these squishy skirmishers. And then this final fight is going to happen over here, which again, unfortunately for Rudauer, the slight terrain advantage is going to be for Angmar, as Eclipse sort of waits for his opportunity to move forward. The Barrow-wights, meanwhile, how slow they are, definitely being brought into sharp relief as the Barrow-wights still trying to move down off of Mount Gundabad. That Numenorean Lancer, they're getting sideswiped off of his horse by a troll. And things are looking good here for the Witch King's Rebellion, I have to say. The Hillmen from Rudauer are really all that remains before he can claim independence from Sauron. What are they going for here? Well, they got something. I guess it must have been a Melkor's Chosen. And yeah, trolls, elite infantry, it's all looking very, very good from an Angmar perspective. Let's have a look at what the red team do have left, however. They do have some strong units of their own. I mean, Granadine Berserkers and Witch Helmet Slavers, both very, very strong. They do still have some Black Wolds. The Rangers are still here as well, but I can't imagine the Rangers will be able to sort of shoot for very long. The Trolls are going to beeline for them, certainly. The Catapult's also firing. And there's the Mordor reinforcements. Most of it's garbage, however. The Moranon units are okay, but the Temple Execution is the only really substantial thing there. So yeah, let's see what sort of last stand the red team can put on for us today. Catapult, does it still have ammo? I mean, based on the fact that rotting meat was used, I would imagine that rotting meat is all they have left. No, they do still have ammunition. An unfortunate miss there, though. They need to get some good hits here on this very large blob of Guardians. Actually, no, they're Blackwatch Legion, aren't they? Blackwatch Legion and Gundabad Guard. Is this going to be a hit? Nope. Luck is against them. This is going to be the final phase of the battle, and you can sense that the noose is tightening. And now Angmar, with their own catapult, putting some pressure on. Mordor's archers trying to get in a position. They're so depleted at this point that their DPS is going to be pretty poor. There's a hit, although fairly limp-wristed. Another catapult shot coming in there, bisecting that unit of Blackwatch Legion this time. At least they are getting casualties at this point. You can now see the Eclipse moving forward. The Reforged Javelins reveal themselves. Which again, they're a good unit to have in melee at this point in time as well. But I think ultimately it's a numbers game at this point. Here come the Guardians of Khandun, although very outnumbered by the Rudauer Swordsmen. So the Rudauer forces will probably hold their ground. Reforged Javelins waiting for a juicier target, I think. Now you can see that over here, Witchrealm Scourge Raiders charging in first. They're going to be backed up by Guardians of Khandun, and then the Trolls are going to follow them in at this section of the line. Moran on guard and immediately buckling under the pressure. Now that was a serious pair of hits there, causing the Gundabad Guard to rout. Rudauer not going quietly into that good night. I don't know what shots they were about. That catapult was not hitting anything. It was a very odd shot indeed. Meanwhile, Temple Executioners moving forward. Trolls also taking arrow fire. Blackwatch Legion coming in. And the Blackwatch Legion are probably just going to push their way through the Moran on Halberd line at this point. You can see the Witchrealm Enslavers here in the middle, giving a lot of these Angmar forces the business, as well as the Thranodine Berserkers. Oof. Bit of friendly fire actually there from the Angmar catapult. Meanwhile, those Angmar Halberds routing as a result of that shot from the Rudauer catapult, so it has actually come good in the end. Witchrealm Pikemen now, victory seems certain. I think that this section of the line was always going to be the weakest to side with the Rudauer Swordsmen. They are going to get some backup now, however, from the Thranodine Rangers. Out of ammunition, good skill. So if they catch the Angmar Halberds unawares, they are also going to get support from the Thranodine Berserkers now as well. So it should be enough to keep this line alive for the time being, but the Barrow Wights are slowly lumbering over the horizon. Meanwhile, see here, the Temple Executioners, now that they have reinforced, starting to sort of run up the line of Angmar a bit here, and the Guardians of Khandun will not be able to stand against Temple Executioners, being supported by the AP of the Halberds as well. Still, the Reforged Javelins are alive. The Rudauer Catapult has really done all it can. The Guardians of Khandun would return, presumably after breaking under the catapult fire. This now is the problem, however. You can see that Froggy and Master Blaster sending their forces around, not playing the game of just trying to sort of grind them down from the front. They're going to use their superior numbers and superior speed now with the Trolls to go around and try and hit the back lines, and I don't think Rudauer have got enough men left to actually cover every avenue of assault at this point. Trolls are being hit by the Reforged Javelins and dying though, so meanwhile the Catapult trying to go for the Reforged Javelins, getting a decent hit on them as well, which is a disaster for Rudauer really. Blackwatch Legion trying to do what they can, but the Temple Executioner is going to be victorious over here. Now would be the time for those Guardians of Khandun to surround them, I think. Here come the Hammer Guard. Reforged Javelins, meanwhile, really giving that Black Guard the business. The problem is going to be, however, when the Hammer Guard get into melee with them. Because the Hammer Guard are going to be able to get a charge off, and their charge is really lethal. The Reforged Javelins are multiple HP shock troops in melee as well, but the Hammer Guard are really on a different level to them. Hybrid units are always going to have some sort of sacrifice made somewhere, and also the Black Guard are also going to be supporting them. The Angmar Halberd victory seems certain. The Thranodine Berserkers taking some damage. The Black Walt and the Witchrealm Enslavers are here in the middle, still doing what they can. But now the Catapult is about to be engaged by the Blackwatch Legion. And ultimately this game of whack-a-mole that Rudauer were trying to play has eventually caught up with them, I think. I think this is going to be the end as the rain continues to fall. The Barrow Wights are now also arriving, which is, even if Rudauer were to sort of pull this around, which, you know, the Rangers are looking like they're going to be victorious, as are the Berserkers, but the Barrow Wights are going to be able to hold them in place for an extended period of time. The Guardians of Khandun now coming over to help out against the Temple Executioners. This is going to be Rudauer's final stand, but a bold final stand it was. Despite their inactivity in the early game, I do think Rudauer have done quite well here. Reforged Javelins going to be trying their best, but ultimately Trolls, all of the strongest Angmar infantry units as well. Victory seems certain. That's, yeah, they're broken and fighting to death. I was going to say, that is very optimistic of the game to say that. The Witchrealm Enslavers are still alive meanwhile, and victorious. And so they are going to be able to come over here and probably kill off this Blackwatch Legion, to be fair. They're already depleted, and in melee there really is no comparison between these two units. The Enslavers will utterly vanquish them. But there are the Reforged Javelins, killed off very, very quickly when the full might of Angmar came along. They were the most dangerous unit left alive, as well as the catapult, so good work to the Angmar players for singling them out and killing them off. Angmar halberds over here, which ultimately the Barrow-wights came along, rolled over the Rangers. The Berserkers over here now also having to fight the Barrow-wights. That is ultimately going to be the end of them, I would imagine. Here come the Blackwolds. Again, they and the Witch Realm Enslavers at this point are really really holding down the fort here in the middle. The Berserkers as well. Let's go and see how the Temple Executioners are getting on. You can see how strong the Temple Executioners are, carving their way through Gundabad Guard and Guardians of Kharndoom, which are strong units, relatively easily. Still doing their best, but ultimately, you know, the numbers are still going to be very much against them. The Hammer Guard is still in good health. There's still a lot of Trolls left alive. The Trolls are just sort of moving around as a death squad at this point, killing off individual parts of the Rudauer line. At this point, the Enslavers are also being overwhelmed. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. Defeat is a distinct possibility. Yeah, I would say that a military genius would not be able to win this for Rudauer and Mordor at this point. Again, you can see the Barrow-wights are lumbering into position. Obviously, that's going to be the... I think the speed, making them faster is a good thing, while making them weaker in melee. It makes them a little bit more usable. It makes Angmar a little bit less of a menace to deal with in melee as well. Because honestly, I don't think the Barrow-wights have been the reason why Angmar have won this fight. I feel as though ultimately the red team did do a pretty good job in places, but again it feels like it was teamwork. Teamwork once again was what gave the blue team the real edge in this fight. Again getting shanked. Here come the Barrow-wights, obviously the tridents of the Witch Realm Enslavers are not going to be enough. Trolls are looking pretty battered and bruised though at this point. Only one Troll of Angmar left alive. All of the other Trolls from all the other armies died after all. Here are the Witch Realm Hammer Guard now coming over to try and finish off the Temple Executioners once and for all. You can see here now, even now the balance of forces is evenly matched, and that's because of the supreme skill of the Executioners. The Hammer Guard should still be able to finish them off though. They are depleted enough and they do still have the support of a few Guardians of Kharndoom. And the Trolls are also getting in position for a big charge, I think. Over here, the Witch Realm Enslavers are just being ground into the dirt, utterly overwhelmed. Where the Trolls are going, maybe they're going home. Well, the Trolls are good enough, they are home. Here we go. The Temple Executioners now finally being put down. And there are the Witch Realm Enslavers. What are the Trolls going after? Are they going after a routing unit, perhaps? Oh no, there's one Troll of the White Hand. So technically Isengard would probably be the last army left alive for the red team, which is extremely strange, although from a moral perspective I think we can certainly say it was Rudauer. With the Enslavers over here, as they finally are killed off. Look at this guy down here. His derpy expression, completely unaware that the rest of his army has been utterly destroyed. Let's go up to ×2 speed, or actually ×6 speed to be fair, as these forces get close. So he survived the initial charge from the Troll of Angmar, but then the Trolls of Gundabad came in and killed him off, good and proper. There's also some Pranodite Rangers over there, so no, Rudauer are the last army left alive, which I think is only proper. The Rangers are going to charge in, their long swords drawn, fearlessly charging into the Trolls as they rush onto them. But yeah, reasonably close actually. Very close in fact, within 4%, or 3% technically, sort of account for all the routing units, which considering this was all evil factions definitely came into play. But yeah, very close fight indeed, but I feel as though the teamwork for Angmar really won it. Also the way that they took the summit from Harad was probably a fairly key point of the battle. The way that Eclipse and Master Blaster in particular worked in tandem to defeat Isengard and Harad was probably what ultimately put this battle out of sight for the red team. They were always playing catch up at that point, to be fair. Harad did a very, very good job with their cavalry, getting the most kills from his team. That Serpent Guard proved to be very, very good. And again, if he'd used his Mumakill a little bit more wisely, the red team could very easily have won this fight. I think Isengard, they struggled a little bit to deal with Angmar's brute force. Rudar, I feel as though they did well. You know, despite their early inactivity, which I was a little bit critical of, they did pull it around with some of their play in the late game. And Mordor as well. I thought that Baconfish was going to roll over Mordor with how that advance was looking, but they turned it around with the support of some of Rudar's forces. So let's see what did the damage for each Angmar army. Baconfish, who got the most kills overall, but then they were facing off against Mordor, who I think had by far the largest army. We have the Angmar Halberds getting the most kills from Baconfish's army, which is, you know, goes to show that Phalanx units can be very, very useful if you get them into the ideal engagement. As for Froggy, his most impressive unit was a unit of Goblin Trackers. We saw, I think it was the one that was up on the hill, basically getting free shots off because they were unopposed at that point. So again, another cheap unit, more than paying for itself. Master Blaster, meanwhile, I would expect a more expensive unit, and indeed, yeah, the Trolls of Angmar getting the most kills for him, and the Trolls of Gundabad both. So, you know, his Troll Death Squad at the end was definitely something which helped tip Angmar over the edge in terms of their victory. And Eclipse, Witches of Angmar getting 371 kills. They were one of the main reasons I think my Harad really struggled on the summit, because those Witches obviously got some very, very nice hits indeed. So yeah, after a little bit of an absence, I am back, I believe. I will be, you know, again, like I've said, there's been a few issues with the PC since I've gotten it back. So I will be I think trying to maybe reinstall all of my medieval stuff, because I did actually get it back and it actually maintained all of my medieval stuff where it was, so I didn't actually need to reinstall any of my rendering settings or my my reshade stuff. But I feel as though because of the change in architecture that I've gone through, there's a little bit of weirdness going on where it takes a long time to load Medieval 2 now. So I think what I will do is uninstall it and then reinstall it onto my new stuff, and then we'll go from there. Hopefully that'll be fine. We'll see, I guess. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. I should be able to do that within the space of one afternoon, and it should be something which, from a viewing perspective, no one really notices. So that is the idea now. So yeah, after an almost a week's absence, which I think is the longest I've gone without uploading a video since I actually started making YouTube content regularly, which is about, you know, a little over 2 years now. So a little bit of a break in my usual routine. But we should be back to normal now. And next, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing next, because obviously my schedule was taken out of whack a little bit. I think I will be doing a pair of 1v1s that I was sent on 0.96. I do want to do a bit more 0.97 stuff, and I do want to get involved in the 0.97 stuff a little bit more, which I was actually going to do more regularly until my PC was taken away. Now I'm trying to get my schedule back together again a little bit. But we'll see. There are still I've still got plenty of battles to choose from. I've got a lot of Rivendell battles actually that I need to work my way through. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and hope you'll join me for whatever is next.